the Zoom to wonder when it actually goes live. So anyways, hello everybody. Welcome to this month's version of Blueprints for Business, sponsored by Forwardly. Jane, good to see you. Thank you so much. I'm Richard. I'm really excited about this topic this week, and I think it's a great week for it because it's lighthearted. We get to share some of our experiences, the different conferences. We've got some great guests on as well that have helped throw some of the conferences we're going to talk about as well. What I'm really hoping will come out of this is feedback from everybody else here who's been to these conferences or other ones. What are you looking for in the future? But we'll get to that in just a bit. So, Richard, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing fantastic. It's been a great week. Kevin and I are planning a trip to Japan, and the week's evenings have been consumed by all the planning and activity around that. So, having a great week. How about you? What you been up to?
Uh, you know, our area's been a little bit fun. It's been pretty hot in our town, we'll just say. So, but I'm glad to be back home after all the traveling and such that I've done. Jane, I've seen you at a lot of different conferences. Are you glad to be back home? How are things with you and Fordley?
I'm so happy to be home.
Okay.
No, it was so amazing traveling enough this year. I think I did 6 conferences, six events. So yeah, very happy to be home. But you know what? I feel like at the beginning of the year, my goal was to become friends with everyone. And I think I managed to become friends with a lot of you. So yay, that's a
Yep.
success.
So we've got a couple other co-hosts that are on with us today specifically that I'd love for them to introduce themselves real quickly, and then we'll just kind of jump in. This is always free form, as you all know. We've got Liz Scott, which I'm sure everybody here already knows. Liz, you had your Appy camp this year. Would you introduce yourself and tell, a quick recap of what your conference was about?
Sure, I'd love to. So Appy Camp this year, we had a really good time in Arizona, and I would say, pushed a lot of us, past some of our comfort zones. And it was, project-based. So we wanted to come up with ideas and collaborate and figure out how do we come up with ideas and then make those into, real life. And so some of those ideas that happened are actually now working with app developers, or in one case, there's somebody who's actually designing their own app. So it was a really cool time for accountants to get together and to think about what can we do with tech possibilities now.
Yeah, it was neat. And in a little bit, we'll get some feedback from everybody who was there as well. So Carlos, I wanted to go to you next. You just finished up with Reframe. Would you introduce yourself and talk about your conference also?
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Carlos Garcia. Many will know me as Hector's brother, but hopefully after this, you'll be able to go to Hector and say, "Aren't you Carlos's brother?" That's my only goal. Okay,
I love
so I'm all about we're always reframing. But yeah, no, we had the pleasure of hosting our second annual Reframe event, which is actually rebranded in the middle of the first year. We rebranded it to Reframe. That's the way we work. We're just constantly reframing. We're constantly changing and radically accepting feedback as a gift to help us get better. But yes, I am a certified coach in several different disciplines, but I come from a financial background. I know accounting because I was a commercial lender for about 15 years for a big bank named Wells Fargo. And so I had to learn a lot about financials and understand the ins and outs of how to help small businesses qualify for lending, which means that they need to have a good relationship with their accountant. And that's where Hector and I kind of crossed paths. And then I came into this world about 3 years ago, and we built this wonderful Reframe community to help level up, mindset, business, and all the other incredible necessary functions to help accounting professionals level up in their world. So thank you for having me today.
Now we know why when the authenticity left with Wells Fargo, it's when you left, right, Carlos? So
that's exactly it.
Okay. We've also got my conference cohort here, Linda. Thank you for joining us as well. We've been to all these different conferences together. So as Alicia, you've been to so many of these as well. So many people have. So thank you everybody for joining. I would like real quickly to start off with a hands up. Who has everybody been to a conference this year? Yeah. and if you're not on video, put a 1 in the chat if you will, as to whether you've been to conferences and which ones. What was everybody's favorite so far?
Happy Camp.
Yeah. Why, Richard?
It really pushed the boundaries of education and immersion to me. There was an exercise that you alluded to earlier that it took place over the course of the entire conference. And Liz, remind me what it was called. Conceptathon?
Yep, 100%.
Conceptathon. And I will say, and Liz, I hope you don't mind me saying, there was a lot of negative reaction at first.
It was hard.
It was very hard, and that is why it was truly one of my favorite exercises of all time, because it pushed you out of the comfort zone. It made you work with people that were, I think the concept was to put people who were alike in groups, and we all found ourselves at one point or another either going like this, but we found ways to work through it and just end up with beautiful presentations at the end. There were some amazing ideas. There were so many ideas at our table that got thrown out so that we could focus on what we wanted to deliver. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Well, Richard, I have goosebumps right now. I mean, my heart is tearing up too. I have to say that one of the goals was to have all of our voices be heard. Like, what is it that we want? What is it that we need? And that's where we've got to step into this place of technology is all over the place, but it's driving us. And so we have to put ourselves into this leadership role to say, if we were to design a solution, what would it look like? And with solutions that are out there, there's a whole lot of development that's happening over the course of 2024. And so they're really looking for our feedback. So it's a prime time. So I'm glad that you were there.
Thank you. I'm happy that I was too.
So Alicia, I saw that you put in 8 conferences. I didn't realize you'd been to so many conferences this year. So which ones have you been to? Team Turquoise, that's right, Liz. Which conferences and what was your favorite, would you say? And explain also the perspective in which you're going to these, because that's an important aspect of it.
Sure. Well, the first thing that I wanted to say is that Appy Camp was also one of my favorites. Also because of what Richard said, but we had the opposite reaction. My team was complete meltdown. Our presentation wasn't even what we had prepped. And what I liked about it was that I got to really see how people really truly operate as human beings, not just in my group, but in all the different groups, because at the conferences, it's always like, oh, you're awesome. And we don't really get the time to like see each other in the trenches. And so that's what I appreciated about Appy Camp, was that deeper level of getting to know people.
100%.
So I went to 8 conferences this year, and a lot of that was because I'm now moved into sponsorship, that Royal Wise has been leveling up into firm level trainings, not just individual trainings. And so that was kind of our marketing strategy for the year, was to get out and get to a lot of different conferences. And so there was ones that people here have never heard of. There were a couple tax conferences. There was the BDO Alliance, the AGN Network, ones that are outside the Pro Advisor community. But for the whole year, my 3 favorites were Appy Camp, because I got to know people as people, Reframe, because I love words and using words, and I love how you can use words to enhance your psyche. And so that was kind of my big takeaway from it. And then Scaling New Heights, just because it's like such an amazing educational opportunity, and also a great opportunity for me for Royal Wise as a sponsor. That was the best event I sponsored all year.
That's interesting feedback. Richard and I, we've got a special roundtable. It's called Not the Only App. And one of the things we do kind of behind the scenes is we will discuss the different conferences from a whole different perspective. There's the companies, not only the people that put on the events, right? Liz and Carlos, it's a lot of time and energy, huge amounts, right? And a lot of money to do all this stuff. But also then the vendors, selecting the vendors you want to partner with to be there, to talk to the people you're inviting is a huge thing, and it's a big expense. So they're always trying to figure out what's the best ROI also. Anybody else want to share what one of their favorite conferences were? We got quite a few people here. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to, or put it in the chat and we can read it out, of course.
I'll also call Tax Retreat. Tax Retreat was a unique experiment 2 years ago where it was two people who said, let's get together. And it turned into 100 people showing up in the same city. The very first event, there were no agendas. There were just random gatherings and lots of community talking with community. I wasn't at that first one, but it inspired me. I did sponsor it. Fast forward a year, and the retreat has grown up a little bit. It is a little bit more formal. There was a lot more presentation style, but the unique concept of people connecting with people. So the same thing that Alicia is saying about I'm sorry, not blueprints, about Appy Camp. The same thing that I am saying, the connectivity of people is really what we've all been craving. My goal this year was to attend conferences that had 200 people or less. I'm tired of 7,000 people, 5,000 people. Those are just cattle calls. 10 minutes in between sessions, rushing back and forth, trying to go to the restroom. When there's 7,000 people and 4 places to go to the restroom, there's just not enough. Okay. It's just too crowded and too agendized. The opportunities for extracurricular conversation. And one of the other things that I really love, both about Tax Retreat and Appy Camp, things were planned into the evening. So dinners were a great thing at Appy Camp. We were all together for dinner. How often do we see that at conferences? The same thing at Tax Retreat. They put us in groups of 10 based on our dietary preferences and where we wanted to go. And we all met new people that we were, I don't want to say forced to socialize with, but got excited about socializing with. And new relationships sprouted up and new partnerships sprouted up and all the things. That's what I loved about these smaller, more intimate gatherings.
Dave,
Hello.
share, my friend.
Super excited to be here. And I have to say, only because I can see Liz Scott here, and I just have to say, like, Appy Camp was mind-blowing this year. It was so much fun to be there. It was a challenge in personal world, not just business. It really challenged you to understand, like, how to deal with drama or conflict. Liz provided us with the space to be vulnerable. And I think that to me is why Appy Camp was such a powerful moment for me. And I feel like when I go to Bridging the Gap, for example, one, I was excited because I got to work with Jane, with Forwardly at our booth and to be the rock star that had all the energy and brought all the people to her booth. But I also had the opportunity to work with Tori and Brian, and we created from the word belonging, we created an entire topic and class on it that is now become like a national treasure. I mean, we are doing 4 events on that same word in the next year. And that's so exciting. Plus, Liz, little 2025, 26, whatever. I'll be there for that too. But I feel like those are the smaller events are where you get the intimacy, you get that connection with your accounting peers. And the big events, like Carlos said in here, it's really about what are you trying to go for? I went to Intuit Connect because I wanted to see why is it Intuit Connect instead of QuickBooks. I wanted to see what am I missing because I don't want to miss something. I didn't miss anything. I could have missed it. It was totally fine for me to miss it. Outside of the fact that I met 6 new people at Intuit that now I have a direct connect with, that they're like, we understand your problem, Dave, and we want to help solve it. Scaling to Heights, obviously everybody knows me. Scaling to Heights is one of my favorite large events. One, not because I got to be on main stage a few years ago, but because it, like Alicia said, it is a educational how to scale your firm. You get to be a small firm, you get to be a large firm, you get to be whatever you want to be. And the connection that is the most important. So like this roundtable today, there's some familiar faces and some faces I don't know here. And wow, it's just so exciting. We can be in a room, be happy, collaborate with each other, hear our best practices, and be able to go somewhere else. Sorry, I'm in preaching moment. I got too many puppies in my world.
All good. Quick reminder to everybody, as you see me looking around, it's part of the reason I'm doing is to manage different social media places, so I am still engaged. But also with that in mind, I'd love to read a couple of the comments for those who are watching externally. Like Jamie, your comment, Reframe was awesome. We loved how the vendors and speakers were all part of the event. They participated in the exercises and brought other perspectives. It was also nice that everything was done in one room and we switched tables so we could meet each other. So for me, I have to say Reframe was my favorite this year. It was very close with Appy Camp, I gotta say. The biggest thing that really struck me right off the bat was the no computer rule. They were very intentional of, look, you're here. We want your attention. So no computers. If you've got note takers, you can use those, like digital note takers are fine, but we are giving you a full workbook and pens that you can do everything with. So you don't need to be on the computer that way. And then I also said phones. Hector's all, if you're going to be taking pictures of the slides, that's fine. But if we see you on your phone, otherwise I'm going to come and take it. And, I think I saw him take one or two. I don't know if he gave him back or not, but it makes a big difference. So, Carlos, can you, touch base on that real quickly as to why did you guys decide to do it that way?
How much time you got? Well, we wanted the content to be a conversation. I mean, the theme of the event was influential conversations. So I think it would be poor leadership for us to talk about having human conversations if humans are not interacting with humans. And so we know that technology can often become a distraction for us. And sometimes we may feel like being connected to technology is what helps us move faster and continue to run the business. But the ability to be present really allows us to have full attention and full absorption of the content that's being created. And I think there were a couple of things that organically developed throughout. We brought a friend of ours who was a speaker. His name is Chris Doe, who's in the personal branding and creative world. He brought some people in his team that are very tech forward. And what one of them did was actually place a microphone right in the middle of the room, attached to his computer. And he is an AI whiz. And he automatically had an AI note taker live scribing everything that was happening in the room and created a hyperlink available to everyone so that you could just be present, listen, experience it, be immersed, grab a microphone, share what you're thinking and feeling at the moment, talk to everyone in the table. And if you missed anything, guess what? Nothing to worry about because the AI note taker had every session recap there. On top of that, we also wanted to give some different ways for people to experience the moments and the memory. So we had a live visual sketch artist actually tell the story of all of the concepts that were being taken. So I think we try to bring different angles of how to learn and how to remember some of these concepts so that people can walk away not just saying, oh, that was great, but go back to it and say, okay, well, how am I going to commit and implement some of the things that I learned? So that's kind of a two-part answer to your question.
One of the things I loved about both Appy Camp and Reframe was you both gave people plenty of time to just breathe and hang out and do stuff. During Reframe, I went out during the lunch break and went swimming in the ocean, not really swimming, like partially drowning in the ocean. And then during Appy Camp, they had many days or day trips into the town, which was this huge, massive, small town, which was neat. But actually, one of my favorite memories of all of the conferences has to be Appy Camp and seeing Saturn. I mean, Like, you guys don't even
Sorry.
understand it. It's everybody's like, oh, you need to go look at Saturn. I'm like, I've seen Saturn. It's that big bright one. I don't know what color it is. No, you saw Saturn and you saw the ring through the telescope. It's a $5,000 telescope, right? Liz, can you kind of share about some of that stuff? And
I'd love to. So when we were looking for a location, one of the things we wanted to do was to be fully immersed in the atmosphere. And one of the things that happened while Heather and I were there that first time is we experienced the stars in almost complete darkness. And on the back side of Appy Camp, there was a ridge that you could see a mesa at the top of it is actually a is where they've got one of the telescopes that a bunch of the professors actually go up there. And so they've got a lookout tower. And so we thought we can't take everybody there, but we could bring those telescopes to us. And so there were several different professors who joined us at Appy Camp, and they did. They brought several different types of telescopes, and they talked about what constellations that we were looking at. We could see the Milky Way. I don't know about you, but in where I'm at, I can't see that any longer. And so to be able to see that, it actually was like a childhood connection for me. And that was a great experience to be able to have that tie into the stars, which actually tied back into Appy Camp of 2022 when we talked about each of us individually is a star, but when we get together, we can form constellations. And the way that people grow is by being known as part of a constellation. If you're part of a constellation that's making moves in this particular area, then you're known for that, and people can come to ask you for tax help, or they can come to ask you for, e-commerce, whatever it is, or one of my big things here lately is mental health. It's like I feel like our profession is truly struggling, and so that's something that I want to be seen for, is being able to help in that area and to be open about my own struggles, to be open about my own life experiences, and being in a small intimate group like that, you had more opportunity to share personal experiences than whenever I think you're at a conference. I think, Richard, you said 7,000 people or so. Yeah, me too. I mean, it's good to see what's going on. And I agree with you, Dave. I wanted to go to Intuit Connect because I wanted to feel that, but it's a different atmosphere. And I have different feelings whenever I left there than I did at some of these smaller conferences.
so I'd like to follow up now. Dave, you asked a great question of some of the other folks here. What would everybody like to see out of a conference? And if either in the chat itself, or if you want to speak up onto it, now's the time. We've had quite a few comments. People were talking about, having a better idea of when a conference is ahead of time. Trust me, I'm sure the people that are throwing these, you guys are trying your hardest to figure them out as far in advance as you can, but it's somewhat tough. Anybody have any comments of what you would like to see? What would get you to a conference?
I think the more intimate settings for me. It absolutely makes a difference. The first time I experienced that kind of a conference was Deeper Weekend, put on by Jason Blummer and Julie Shipp. And it was a completely different experience. Imagine very much like what I'm hearing Reframe was like. I sadly wasn't at Reframe yet, but one room, tables of 10, people moving about the different tables so that they're meeting different groups. There were group activities. That really gets me going.
And I want to add to that. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I want to add to that because I'm in puppy zone. It's had so much energy right now, and we're here. We're on a round table. This is what I want, but in person. And I think that scaling gives us that ability at Scaling New Heights and some of the smaller events to do these type of roundtable relationship building, answers to questions. Like Linda, you are like the person in charge of all things nonprofit, and we know that. And so it's like we want you there to talk to us. You're not the Linda. You're law firms.
Yes.
So sorry, but law firms. Let's go.
Law firms like profit. They like a lot of it.
But you're law firms, and so hey, I might have questions about how do you do it? Like, what are you? Let's talk about this conversation because I don't do it. But hey, I'm on the board of directors for all of Colorado attorneys. How am I not doing law firm accounting? So I think that sorry for my MSF, but but you get my point. That's what I want. I want connection, like Liz Scott said, I want relationship building. Liz Farr talking about less music, in your face. I mean, don't get me wrong, I want the party also.
Alexis added real quickly online that she also agrees. She wants more group chats, less talking heads. And sorry, I spoke over somebody there, but just wanted to add that in.
That was me. To finish out what I was going to say is planned evenings. We've all been to the big conferences, I'm assuming, and the evenings tend to get very scattered and weird. When everything is planned out, you can go here and stargaze, you can go inside and have a drink, you can hang out over here. When they're beautifully set up like that, and both Deeper Weekend and Appy Camp were set up that way, it was amazing. I didn't have to think. You know what else I would like during conferences is planned breaks that are more than 10 minutes or 30 minutes for lunch. The ability to just recharge, the ability to go back and have a nap, take an extra shower, do whatever you need to do to recharge. That's what energizes me. I always feel like I'm missing part of the conference at something like QuickBooks Connect, where I tend to around 2 o'clock peter out. My energy is drained. I go back up to my room, take a nap, take a shower, and then come down for the evening festivities. And it was nice at these other conferences to just have that time scheduled in.
So there are some really great comments on the side here that I want to read out. If anybody wants to share instead of me reading their comment, please feel free to raise your hand either way. But right off the bat, Alicia, I wanted to ask you and actually Jane in a moment from the vendor perspective of it, a little bit more context. But Alicia, you put, for me, it's relevant content. I'm in a different role than most since I am a training provider, not a firm. That's why I appreciate Appy Camp so much, because the attendees are all content creators. Excellent point. Excellent point. Tori also had said that she wants to see other locations other than, I want to see the locations be somewhere that all people will feel safe. Florida has a lot to offer, but a lot of people don't attend there because they don't feel safe or support their friends who don't feel safe. Also, more intimate in conferences, inclusive, new voices, along with the people we hear all the time at the different conferences. Christy actually put on, Christy Monahan said, I like opportunities for smaller conversations, practical learning, works hoppy, practical learning versus a bunch of keynotes, opportunities for smaller, intimate settings, and so forth. So my reading skills are dwindling.
That was workshoppy.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, my reading skills are going downhill, so somebody can take over. So Linda, you're the lucky one. Everybody, all the conferences are in your state, right? But you're starting to actually be asked to speak at more conferences that are more industry specific and such. How different are some of the other conferences? And I'd love to hear that from other people as well. If you've done any industry specific ones, how different is it?
We did ClioCon, which is always very well done. They've got it down to a science, but this year it was in Austin, Texas, and it was the most grossest city I've ever been into. I was scared. There were people hiding in dark corners. I really would never go back to Austin based on that conference, just like St. Louis was for me too.
St. Louis was horrifying.
Yeah, both of those were they're off I will never, if the conference is there, I will not go. But the conference itself is fabulous. This year it's in Boston, ClioCon, which I'm thrilled. I get to go up there and, speak my language because I'm from Rhode Island. But yeah, so the conference, my favorite conference was Reframe. I loved Appy Camp too. It's like almost the same, but Reframe got me to a place. I still haven't figured out everything I've learned there, and I'm reading the books. I'm going to take it slow. So I'm my typical MO is to go in and just dive head first and go overboard with it. And I'm trying not to do that with this. I think that the conference, there's so much that I learned, and I have notes. What you said in the beginning about turn your phone over, I've never done that at a conference before. And I'm like, well, we'll see how this goes. I don't want Hector to take my phone. So I turned it off, and it was so good. Actually, when I got home from the conference, I have an assistant who's taking care of my emails, which she never has to do because I'm like Johnny on the spot. And I'm like, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to let you handle my emails and I'm going to pop in twice a day and just look at what you have. And she puts drafts in and it's been fantastic. I'm not dealing it. If it's an emergency, she'll come and give me a message, but I let go of that control, which you know me, it's really hard to do. But I enjoyed all of them. I mean, bridging the gap last year, I almost wish I had missed it this year because that one's fantastic too. The small ones, Intuit Connect is just different. I enjoyed it as well. I've had some great conversations with the people, not so much the event of Intuit Connect, but the people that after it was really where I found it. And I like that we didn't have all these parties, the big parties. I don't care for that. These smaller ones where you could just, like at Appy Camp, hang out and not do the partying. I'm past the partying stage, but I just like hanging out, going to the beach, playing cards, and I learned how to play flux. So, you know, so that's a part of the fun. We had a lot of fun just sitting around talking, and that's the best part of it because you do learn a lot. I mean, I learned a couple of things that I don't think I would have learned if I hadn't had conversations like with the guys from Acuity or, you know, people that are in the same space as we are with our firm, that we're getting to the same space, but we're behind them, but we learned things from them. So having those conversations were just the best part of it. I learned more from the people.
Linda, I have the exact opposite problem as you, where at a conference, I am disconnected. I don't look at my phone. I don't bring a computer. I don't want to be connected. Pretty much the only thing I use the phone for at a conference is to find other conference goers. Other than that, messages can wait, emails can wait, all of the things can wait until I'm back. I do want to live in the moment. And I don't find being tethered to a phone is an ideal scenario. So I tend to just forget it exists. The only reason, and the worst, I forget to take pictures because I'm just not glued to my phone at all at conferences. So most of the pictures that I get are from other people's posts.
Yes, and he did turn my watch notifications off, which has also been a blessing because I was doing this constantly. So I was constantly connected there too. So yeah, it was good. I get it. I've never done that before. Responsible Linda always wins out. So I'm trying to give that up a little bit. Not easy.
So what if there was one topic that you would like to see another conference on next year? And I know this is probably kind of a harder question, but a general topic that would be around. What would you choose?
I would love to see more out there on working with the neurospicy, neurodivergent folks. Because I think it's an important topic that so many people, their management style is just very homogenous. Everybody fits into a mold, or they should fit into a mold, and recognizing that different people have different strengths and bring them to the table in their own ways. And how to bring the best out in people is one of the topics that we don't talk about enough. The softer skills types of things, I think, are also very important, and we don't often cover them. We assume that we have them, or we wouldn't be able to go to conferences. But also, it's not about what I'd like to see. It's also about the setup, meaning, for whatever reason, having a quiet space for people to go whenever they need to recharge their batteries. You know, we did that for our membership, and there was a big cooperative about 3 years ago at Intuit Connect. We got an extra suite that people could come check out a key, and there were multiple rooms in the suite, and we had 5 people in there, but nobody was talking. Everybody was on their own little private space, but they didn't have to walk 20 minutes back to their own rooms. They could just go right upstairs and go into the recharge area. Because so many people need it, and we don't acknowledge that. We look at these conferences as, every hour there has to be 4 choices of what to go to, and you've got to go to one or you're going to be wasting your money. So it is about the downtime, the mental health time, and just the recharge time. So we just don't get enough of that. We talk about work-life balance, and that's the irony. We could sit through 6 sessions of work-life balance and need to recharge, and yet here comes another session about work-life balance. And it makes no sense anymore. It's like let's just go at a regular pace instead of the pace that we go. The other thing, Matthew, that I think isn't always addressed here is how much education do you really get in an hour? I would love to see sessions that extend and go beyond. Here and there we'll see a 90-minute session, but it's rare that we see a 4-hour session on a topic that people might want to deep dive into. If so, they're oddly broken up into part 1 and part 2 and part 3, and different people register for them based on how many openings are available. No, if you're going to be registered for one, go to all of them. Things like that, I think, are what conferences really need to change and to thrive at this point. Yeah, anybody?
I think I would tag on to that. I would say, you were talking about neurodivergent and all of the things that go along with that, and trying to balance work-life balance, whatever that harmony looks like, trying to find it. And I would say that's more of what I would be leaning in towards. I'm seeing all of the hearts and the 100% and comments to Liz Farr's comment that she had posted in about more mental health type of sessions. And, a funny thing, when I went to London and went to a conference there, it was actually Intuit Connect or QuickBooks Connect that was there. And they actually had sessions in London that were related to mental health. And some of the things that they were talking about as entrepreneurs, as accountants, the type of work that we do is very analytical and it can stress your brain. And so it was talking about in their conferences ways that we needed to create mental space. So how can you separate and get some space between the work that we do, what part of our brain is necessary in order to complete that work, and then the balance of the rest of your life? So then you also have the touchy-feely part of it with, you've got kids or families or, loved ones that you're taking care of, whatever it might be. But there is an acknowledgement, or at least there was an acknowledgement in London, that there does need to be this way that we need to educate ourselves for more than just CPE credits, and how to do our job better, but actually how to live within our profession better.
I really like it.
I love hearing about that experience. I'd like to add one other thing that doesn't apply to me, but I've heard it time and time again. Daycare at conferences. How do people feel?
Yeah.
How do people feel about that?
I would not trust my kids with anybody I didn't know.
I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but it's another like
kids are in college, Liz.
Light and all
I
that
know,
stuff.
I know. One day I'll have like little people. I hope I have little pups, so I may only have little pups. That's okay, but I would be careful about who I left my little pups with.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea because that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, especially the side hustlers or the people who are working from home. They're doing the bookkeeping and the accounting because they can work from home, but they can't go to conferences because of childcare. And so having somebody who is vetted and can't remember the right word, but credentialed to provide that service, I think would make it so that we can diversify the people who are going.
With that, Alicia, but I'm with Liz. I don't trust people with little people that, especially if the kids are little and they have a hard time communicating. And
well, that's why I'm saying somebody who is an authorized provider, not just like a volunteer who's
right.
No,
and it's not
right.
It's not compulsory, Shannon. It's not.
No, I know, but I'm just like, I've dealt with credentialed people who shouldn't be around children.
Christy, you.
I actually had a client that's one of the services they had. They put nannies into homes, and there was a lady who had it was a franchise, and there was one lady who did it in hotel rooms like in Orlando. But I don't know that I would do it, but people did it.
Christy, you were about to add something earlier.
So, as a single mom of kids that where their dad lives 35, 40 minutes away from me in a different school district, I cannot tell you how many things that I had to pass up on because I could not find someone to come and stay at my house, and my kids were not old enough to stay here by themselves for multiple days in a row. And I respect and understand those that wouldn't feel comfortable about leaving their kids with a stranger, no matter what their credentials might be. But I think that's why we have options. And having an option, even if I could have just, hired someone to sit with my kids during the day in my hotel room, to make sure that they weren't setting things on fire or killing each other, would have been a huge help to me. I could have done a lot more with a lot less. Just my 2 cents.
And I have to say, I just corrected myself, listening to myself say my thoughts out loud. I am the mom who worries, and that is kind of like my thoughts, but it is true. And Christy, I want to acknowledge that hearing you say as a single parent that raising your kids and needing to be able to better your professional self, and just to even have the connections with the people. It is important to be there. And so I back that. So I just wanted to correct myself.
Yeah. Donna, you had your hand raised as well.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, so I'm all about the daycare. My kids are gone out of college. One comes with me now, works with me, but I'm all about the daycare for those people that are single and trying to build a business. That's one of their biggest struggles. And I'd say I put it in the chat too, but look to what Disney does on their cruise ships for daycare, because you can drop your kids off. Look to what they do. It is awesome the way they manage it. There's no way a kid will get out of there. So if they're going to do it, look to they're the model. They're the models on how you handle it. Now, I do know other things. You can hire nannies to come watch your kids. I mean, you can do that too at hotels. There's many of those services. I would prefer, if it were me in this day and age, I would prefer where it was one contained space where the kids went and there were cameras and I could check in on them and the whole thing. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm really not in the realm, but I'm all for it. If it were to happen, I'd even be help planning. I would be all for it because I know there are so many bookkeepers I meet that are just starting out, but they can't go anywhere because they don't have it. They just don't have any of that support. So I'm all for it.
So that brings up an interesting question then. That kind of leads to the idea of what do everybody think about the online or the webinar-based conferences? Do you feel you get the same amount out of them, or are they better in person? Any thoughts there?
I think that there are 2 really amazing online conferences that have happened over the years, Growing Your Firm Virtual and WorkflowCon. Both are exemplary of what it should be. I will also say Sharam at Financial Sense has really outdone himself on the virtual conference scenario. The very first year, there was a DJ that stayed 2 or 3 hours after the conference and just played a playlist, but he was live and spinning tunes, and people were still in the chat for 2 to 3 hours after the conference. So it really kind of created that camaraderie around things. I will say my opinion of where the online conferences get it wrong is not recognizing that people are still at their desks and they're still working, and 3 minutes in between sessions is not enough time, and there's a whole list of those kinds of things. Excuse me. One of the bigger things though that I would like to see, and I am someone who speaks at conferences, but one of the bigger things that I would like to see is a diversity of newness. We about 4 years ago, there was a shift where it was like, why is every single human here an old white male? And we started seeing more diverse voices on stages and at the mics in the breakout rooms. But I think in many ways we're still seeing a lot of that at many conferences, and we're not seeing enough women, we're not seeing enough people of color, we're not seeing enough LGBT representation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are issues that go along with every one of those groups. And we don't talk about that. We just say, okay, now we've got somebody who checks the box to be on that stage. I want to see the reason for them being up on the stage. I want to talk about the different life experiences that people have. We often talk about the firm experiences, but we don't talk about what brought them to those conclusions and why they are there. I hope that made sense.
Real quickly, I just want to give a quick shout out to Sarah Simpson from Canada. She's been trying to get in, but I didn't do a link or something, so she may not be able to get in. But thank you for watching still from a live source. And then I also just wanted to share. Alexis had also said new people are needed on conference stages. So I have a follow-up question, but let's go to Dave first, then Donna, and then I've got a follow-up question. All that.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about virtual conferences, like WorkflowCon, I think that it's really exciting and engaging, and there's an opportunity. It can be a little much, especially this year where it was, 3 days before scaling or before Intuit Connect, where it's like I just gave up 2.5 days and now I'm going to give up another week. When we talk about webinar type of situations, I think that the thing that I find the hardest with webinars is to stay focused, because I can't just sit and watch what's going on. I'm the person that needs to be walking around and engaged, and I don't feel like there's a lot of engagement, or it's very university style teaching. Like, I am the teacher, here's my PowerPoint, do your homework and I'll grade your test. And that's not what I want. But what I do love is something exactly what we're doing here that, Forwardly has graciously, offered and sponsored for us to participate in, is this engagement, this conversation, that can move from one topic to another topic, and we don't get upset about it. And I think that, Christy, I love your message in here where, you just can't pay attention, but you're paying attention. And, the other day when we were in another class together, you were not only in our class, in this session, but you were also watching something else live, which was WorkflowCon. But it was awesome, that you were able to multitask and still stay engaged. And so that to me is a true testament to what is of value.
Dave, you've heard me say it 100 times. No one needs another PowerPoint. That's why Roundtable Labs is engaging to me. Nobody's at the front of the room being the one to say, this is the way to do it. It's about the conversation of how do we get there and how do we create expertise amongst ourselves. Rather than the big PowerPoint. I never want to see another PowerPoint as long as I live. I think they're the worst, especially when people don't know how to write them. But that's a different story for a different day. So let's go to the other hands. We've got Donna. Donna?
So on those virtual web things, whatever they do, I stopped signing up for those years ago. Just because, like, most of the time it was the same stuff, just regurgitated over and over a sales pitch, or like, and I'm not gonna sit at my desk and watch it. I want engagement. I want stuff like this. I want where we can participate. Those conferences, whatever they are, I just pass because I'm not gonna watch them. It's just more of the boring stuff. So if I'm gonna go attend a conference, I'm gonna go in person. I want to participate. I want to speak at all the conferences, but unfortunately in the bookkeeping world, I don't get picked. In a lot of other worlds, I do. So like I put a comment, I just created my own YouTube channel, went there and live streamed everything. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I personally, and I think others have said the same sentiment, is like, it's just you just get distracted with your own stuff because you're at your desk doing your own thing. So and you might be able to engage with people, but you don't really get to. A lot of times, the ones I remember I used to go to, there was a lot of selling in them also, which is sort of annoying. Granted, they are free. So, and again, that's another reason why I don't join them. If they're free, how valuable are they? That's another thing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on those things.
That's interesting. A question about pricing, something we can follow back up on in a short bit. But first, let's go to Carlos, and then we'll go to Shannon.
Yeah, I think being able to host and create a curriculum for a virtual type of conference-like experience, it will never match what it is to do as an in-person. But what I have learned is when when I was in my training role in Wells, I had a team of anywhere between 50 to 60 people. And in order to be able to hold their attention, because we would have to meet virtually, because during COVID, we weren't able to have in-person stuff. So we would have rallies that would require us to do business development. And with this, which would mean is we were teaching a topic, then we break out in rooms and we make them go out and do actual phone calls to try to, set appointments or whatever, and then come back and share feedback. It required for us to break and disrupt the format a lot. So I think the puzzle that needs to be solved in order for virtual conferences to be impactful is that the formula needs to be changed of what impactful means. So for example, Matthew, if you were to hold this type of event, rather in a room of 26 people, is what if you sent us all out to an adventure where you break us out into rooms of 4 or 5, where it forces 4 to 5 people in a breakout room to solve that puzzle. And then we circle back as a big group and we share what we learn. So there's some intimacy, and it requires every single person to actually be active on the Zoom, to show the camera, to unmute the mic, and to feel more invested in being present. And I think that's where we lose people, is when you're in a virtual conference where you're listening to a talking head, or maybe there's 5 or 6 really smart and really wonderful people that can share a lot of value, but it makes everyone else feel less compelled to share because there's too much competition for everyone to hold the stage. So I think it's a tough puzzle to solve, but I know if we're going to do a Reframe virtual version, it's definitely going to be more different and more dynamic than anything we're seeing out there, and probably even in shorter spurts, because you can't do an 8-hour virtual conference. It's exhausting, right? You can't sit in front of a computer staring at a screen for 8 hours. So it's definitely a good puzzle to solve.
I love the idea. Shannon, I'll come to you in just one quick second. I'd love to just show of hands or put a 1 in the comments if you like that idea of doing the breakout rooms, having some kind of a topic with intent, and then everybody jumps off into different groups and then comes back and shares. I'm really digging that concept quite a bit. So that's sunk in. Bingo. If you read Reframe, you know what that's about. Shannon.
So when I started my business, I couldn't afford even the ticket to attend a conference in person, let alone the flight and the hotel. So I did a lot of virtual conferences. There were free ones, there were ones that I paid for. And after a while, you got to know, okay, well, don't ever sign up for this type of one again, because all it is, it's like 5 minutes of information and 50 minutes of a sales pitch. But there were good ones that people put on that, some were free, some were paid, but like Michelle Long and Sandy Leva used to put on the accounting VCon, and I met so many really awesome people at that virtual conference, because once I figured out how to attend a virtual conference, because I'm sitting there, I'm like, nothing's happening. Like, I'm just sitting in this thing. And then I realized, oh, there's an auditorium you have to go to. Oh, there's this thing that you have to go to. But my point is that I think there's a time and a place in everybody's business journey that sometimes the virtual conferences is what you go to because that's what you can afford. And the trick is to find which ones have value that aren't just where you can, chat with people, you can, communicate. Because I've been to plenty of virtual conferences since COVID where you can't talk to anybody. You're just there, you're sitting and you're listening, or you're not, because your mind wanders. And anybody who's ever been in anything with me knows I'm constantly in the chat. I need that interaction with people. And even if it's just where I just am putting my thoughts out there. But the very, very first accounting conference that I went to in person was the 2019 QuickBooks Connect in San Jose. And I would have gotten more out of it had I not been sick, but I still got a ton out of it. And that at that time, that was a huge stretch for me to be able to go, not just monetarily for the hotel, the conference, we drove out there, but the time away from the office.
Amen.
Because I think a lot of people don't think about, okay, this is, time completely out of the office. And I try not to be somebody who's sitting there at the conference doing work.
Yeah.
Because you need to be present. And even when I'm at a virtual conference, I'm trying not to do work.
I agree with you. Don, I'm going to go to you as our last thing here. We're getting close to the last couple minutes though, and I appreciate it all, but Donna, feel free to chime in, please.
So back to Carlos and the breakout room experience. So I'm in a group of bunch of content creators, YouTube and other things. We go, and they're international. So we'll have a Zoom like this. It'll be like 1,000 people, and they will set up breakout rooms to 4 to 5 people. And I will get more done in those than anything else. And every month it runs like that. And it is the best thing ever. It got me to do stuff. And that's where I pay attention to stuff, and that's the only thing that I go to consistently because of that experience. And it can be done because, this is international. I get to meet people all over the world who are doing kind of stuff like I'm doing, and they inspire me, and hopefully I inspire them too. But anyway, they're doing more for me, and it's because those breakout rooms are so small. So when Carlos said that idea, I hadn't even considered it in our world with the virtual conferences, because I just didn't mix the two together in my brain. But when he said it, I'm like, oh my gosh, if we did this at our conferences that were virtual, I would be all about it.
I love that. One of the reasons we've actually upgraded the Zoom that we have here, I'd like to ask everybody for a quick moment. Go to your Zoom, go click on the More button. And under the More button, you'll see that there are resources. And if you click on resources, we can add additional things that you can go and download. Fordley's given us some other stuff. Technology is continuing to evolve to where we can do so much more than we ever did before. The breakout room is actually doing more for it. The captions for people that are hearing impaired. There's so many things so we can include more people. So I really dig this idea. And I'm going to steal it, Carlos, and figure out how we can best utilize the Zoom platform to engage more people from it. As we close down time-wise here, because we always try to be very cautious of everybody's time, I want to again say thank you to Fordley. It's been just shy of, we're just shy of a year of doing these now, about 9 months or so, and it's been a lot of fun. And I appreciate Fordley taking the time to sponsor this and give us the chance to bring everybody together. I hope you guys all had a good time today and have had fun at the conferences. We can still get together like this. It's more fun in real life at times, but as we've said, it can be pretty expensive. So Jane, thank you very much. You've always had faith in us, and I appreciate all that Fordley does for us. Thank you.
Hey, before we go, Jane, is there anything that you'd like to talk about with Forwardly? Anything new in the world of Forwardly?
Yeah, we're upgrading our automatic payments module. So next week-ish, week after, it's going to be way easier to request automatic payments from your clients. Like beautiful, beautiful process.
When you say automatic, do you mean recurring?
Yeah, recurring payments. So any kind of like invoice that you have that's on automatic payments to get paid regularly, just going to be super easy to request it through the platform.
Awesome. I'm so glad I asked. That's wonderful.
Yes. I'm very proud of it. It looks so good.
Well, on that note, everybody, thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And as I always like to say, here's wishing you